Hello, this is day 94 of the Bible in a Year. God bless you. And we are reading Judges chapter 16 through 18, and it's the continuing saga of the dysfunction of the various tribes of Israel. You've got the conclusion of the story of Samson, and I mentioned as that he's a kind of a type of John the Baptist. He's very much like John the Baptist, and particularly remember the story of John the Baptist when Herodias danced for the people, and King Herod offered to give her anything, and she asked for the head of John the Baptist, and so for the amusement of the guests, John the Baptist is beheaded. And so John the Baptist kind of being used or made sport of, as it were. And here we've got in verse 25, they bring Samson out to make sport of him, to sort of make fun of him in front of everybody because he's lost his strength, and they're going to kind of make fun of him for their entertainment. And so it's a little bit, again, another indication that Samson was kind of like a John the Baptist, but also he's kind of like a Christ figure because Jesus also was in prison, and he was mocked and ridiculed, and that scene of Samson, that image of him being put into a prison and forced to grind at the mill, to sort of push a circular stone around to grind the grain in a prison, and all of that happened to him kind of reminds us of the suffering. His eyes are gouged out, and all of those things, all of the things that were done to Christ in his passion. In chapters 17 and 18, it's a kind of an odd story. Again, speaking of the dysfunction of the Israelite tribes, you've got this story of Micah, who's kind of a fellow who kind of means well, maybe, but he is typical of the people who kind of get mixed up in their religion. So he's someone who practices religious syncretism. So in other words, he's kind of an Israelite, but he nevertheless, mixes in some of the paganism. He's got some New Age stuff that he does too, kind of like he's got these little idols, and then he installs a priest who's not really legitimate because he's a Levite, but we find out later that his name was Jonathan, and he was a descendant of Moses, but not a descendant of Moses' brother Aaron, and only the descendants of Aaron were true priests. So he was a Levite, but not a Aaronic priest, not a priest from the tribe of Aaron. And so therefore, the Old Testament, the Israelites would always recognize that this guy was kind of a fraud, and that Micah, he didn't really understand the finer points of the Torah. So he installs this fellow for a fee, and this priest Levite is happy enough getting a salary from him, but then he quickly goes off with the Danites when they offer him more money to be a mercenary priest for them, and that leads to the final kind of punishment for Micah. He is eventually robbed of everything that he sort of bought with his silver. He had bought those idols and stuff, and he had also bought a rent-a-priest, and it all got taken away from him by these Danites who were traveling through and looking for a tribal territory. The tribe of Dan had been given a territory along the sea, and there were some stubborn Canaanites who they couldn't quite drive out, and so they never got all of their inheritance. And so that's why in this story you've got these roving Danites who are looking for a tribal territory. They're looking for land. They got no land, And so they have this military efforts to settle themselves somewhere, and they choose this place called Laish, and eventually they renamed it Dan, but they set up this pagan shrine there, so it becomes kind of a rival religion to the true worship of Israel. But there is, I have a footnote here in my Ignatius Study Bible that says there's no suggestion in the book of Judges that this Danite migration was really ordered by the Lord, that the Lord didn't really approve of it. They were just kind of doing what each one was doing, what they thought right. And so it's a purely human affair, human calculations and actions. It's not something that God ordered them to do, to go and, militarily take another territory within the land of Canaan. In the story of Micah, I'll just mention something that has to do with priesthood, since I'm a priest and I kind of find it interesting. But there's definitely this repetition of the idea that a priest was like a father. And speaking of a priest as a spiritual father was very common. So you've got that in chapter 17, verse 10. And it says, stay with me and be a father and a priest for my family. And that was just very common sort of language in the Old Testament. And also the word in verse number 5, where it says that this fake, phony rent-a-priest was installed as a priest and became a priest. The word installed or ordained, is actually literally in Hebrew, filled the hand, and that's an idiom for priestly ordination. In other words, a priest is someone who they put something in your hand. Even in priestly ordination now, in Catholic priestly ordination, they'll give you a chalice, for example, and you're given the sacrifice offering, what you're going to offer up to God is put into your hand, and also the task, of course, the work is put into your hand. So a priest is ordained, and literally the word means something is put into your hands, and you've got to perform this task or this offering of your life and of the sacrifices to the Lord. That's what a priest is, someone whose hand has been filled with a priestly task.